for this Friday, November 22nd of 2024. My name is Councillor Evan Duncan. I'm the chair of this committee. I'm joined today by Councillor Dobson and Mays. Councillor Chambers, who is also on this committee, is away on city business. Before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge that we are on Treaty 1 territories, the home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Innu, and Dakota people, and in the national woodland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation in Treaty 3 territory. Can I have somebody move?
Can I move that the minutes of the meeting held on November 1st, 2024 be taken as read and confirmed?
Moved by Councillor Dobson, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? And that is carried. We can move into. Pardon? Sure, yeah. Could I have somebody move a leave of absence for Councillor Chambers?
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Dobson, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And that is also carried. Thank you very much. We have a few delegations this morning. As I look at the list here to speak to report number 4, before we introduce the delegates, I'd just like to remind everybody here to speak. Thank you very much for coming first and foremost. If you do hear some of your presentation, I just kindly ask that you don't repeat that part again. We're hearing it, it's on public record, and I thank you for that. And then please provide whatever other information you have. Thank you very much. I'll turn it over to the clerk.
Okay, so first to speak is Derek Earl with Biz for Climate.
Good morning.
Morning. Good morning, Mr. Chairperson, councillors. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here to participate in the meeting this morning. So I'm Derek Earl, founder and chair of the board of Biz for Climate, here to express our support for the motion, reporting on the tools and mechanisms to examine the phase out of natural gas. I'm with Biz for Climate, so we're a Winnipeg-based not-for-profit. We represent a growing network and coalition of a diverse group of businesses that are committed around advocating for climate policy and in support of a broader transition to an emissions-free economy. We have 208 companies have signed on to a climate action pledge, which supports these general messages, affirming that there's an urgency around the issue of climate change to be looking for and ways to implement broader solutions. So time is of the essence in the bigger picture. The second message that climate action is really now part of the economic strategy going forward. In that, from a more of an economic competitiveness and prosperity standpoint, that we felt the way that we're going to be able to essentially win in this race and participate is about being the cleanest and the greenest as companies and as jurisdictions. So that's a key message that's kind of fundamental to the approach. And third, that we do need public policy leadership to help set the direction and set the stage to be able to look at implementing solutions going forward. And that does, we feel, include the work happening at this committee and these important questions. So kind of moving on to the issue at hand here in terms of examining options for the future role of natural gas. It is part of that bigger climate change picture and discussion, and often this is something that can feel very complex. It's massive, it's big, it's a lot for us to take on and to tackle. I imagine there's plenty of concerns around feasibility of doing so, costs, affordability, other urgencies and priorities that might be in play. And we certainly recognize that's the case. But notwithstanding, we still have this broader context and how do we look at moving forward solutions. So essentially, we do see this kind of from the other way around in the different lens, not so much the problems or challenges of doing this, but the opportunity side of it. Taking what could be a smaller step right now, but an important one in terms of starting to study what the options are. And we also want to kind of bring a message that, the city does not have to go at it alone with this. That's not what this is about. There's many who are ready to kind of take up the baton on this and be, support and be part of the bigger solutions. But we work with businesses that, they do get that. There's decisions to be made. There's priorities. People have limited time, resources, and we do need to prioritize. But these same business owners are also stepping forward to help articulate the message that it's important that we look at ways to do this. And really now is the time to be doing so. But business also needs a clear path to follow, right? We need pragmatic approaches, evidence-based decisions, and time and certainty to be able to work on solutions, to be able to put in place the partnerships, make smart investments, develop and deploy technologies that can help to get us there. So we see this study as very much a step on that path, a useful one, a pragmatic one, and something that we would definitely like to see forward. And we also note that, deferring action does entail the potential for additional risks or potentially the problem being bigger down the road. So getting on with the study and starting to see what we can do, we think is important. Other jurisdictions are moving this direction in Canada as well. Quebec, for example, has just set a 2040 deadline about removing fossil fuels from buildings, a new regulation. And interestingly, I would note that was initially being led through municipal developments and regulations that's helped set the tone, and the province is now picking up on that to go broader with that approach. So, some interesting examples we can look at. To wrap and to try to keep things brief, again, we do support the motion to proceed with the study. We think it's an important step to help evaluate the options that are available and the alternatives. Again, we want to know what tools do we have in the toolbox collectively to be looking at this. See it as a reasonable and a pragmatic measure that we could be taken to start to contribute to that the broader solution. And again, emphasizing the need for whatever path we look at to start implementing solutions, it can be based on the best evidence we have in knowing what it is that we can do. So with that, I'll thank you again for the time and the opportunity to be here today.
Thank you very much. Councilor Mays, that's a question.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. Can you just clarify the 2040 Quebec, is that for new installation, or was that just what was the
So
nature of that?
It's a regulation to prohibit the installation of natural gas heating appliances in new residential buildings less than 600 square meters and less than 3 stories. So it's really from all buildings except for the industrial sector that they're starting to look at that.
Okay, thank you.
Hot off the press news in terms of announcements there.
Seeing no other questions, thank you for your time.
Okay, next is Adrian Warner to be here with respect to report 4. Adrian is joining us in person today.
Good morning.
Good morning, Councilors May, Duncan and Dobson, members of the Water, Waste and Environment Committee. My name is Adrian Werder. I'm speaking today as a citizen who cares deeply about the future of this city, a professional who believes in making decisions based on data, a homeowner chained to the current system of natural gas infrastructure, and a parent worried about the world in which my children will grow up in. I'm urging you to support this motion to study the mechanisms to phase out natural gas infrastructure in this city. Winnipeg is the envy of jurisdictions in North America. Whereas most of them are on systems that rely on coal and gas, most of our electricity already comes from hydro. This means that every house that switches from natural gas to electric or geothermal automatically eliminates a major source of carbon emissions in the city. Simple as that. And natural gas is not just any kind of emission. It's one of the worst. It is a fancy word for methane, and methane is 25 times more powerful than CO2. Our natural gas systems are notoriously leaky. Issues are hard to detect, and the fuel is bad for people's health when we use it in our homes. Phasing in other forms of heat is not just good for the planet, it's good for us, and it's good for the economy. What do I mean by that? As more corporations are making commitments to transform their businesses into net zero emitters, they're looking for places where renewable energy is cheap and heating does not impact their carbon footprints. That means that Winnipeg could be a leader in the green economy if we can address this one major emission source. In these kinds of discussions, I know that reliability and alternative sources of power are really important questions. How do we provide the increased power demand during the switch? What are reliable alternatives if the grid shuts down during an extreme weather event, which will only become more common during climate change? Once again, we're very fortunate here. The provincial government has signaled that it will be willing and excited to invest in wind and solar and geothermal to meet future demands, and therefore maintaining our competitive energy advantage across North America. And even if we approve a phase out mechanism very quickly, the change cannot happen overnight. As policymakers, you know better than I do that it takes a long time for these things to make a visible impact. We have time to anticipate the ramp up and make changes necessary towards it. In my professional life, I'm a project manager who makes decisions based on information. And so to me, supporting this notion is a practical step in figuring out the next steps necessary, how to address this major source of emissions that the city is committed to eliminating by 2050. Once the city knows the mechanisms, it will be easier to debate the feasibility, the costs, the impact based on facts and a shared understanding of what's possible. There are many people in this room who know more about this issue than I do, and I'm sure that they'll speak to some more of the technical considerations. But one last thing I want to say is that using the word phase out kind of misses a huge opportunity and may not actually represent accurately what we're doing here, at least in my opinion. I would much rather talk about phasing in geothermal and electric. As a home buyer, I was forced to purchase home heated by natural gas despite knowing the possible impacts on my health. Phasing in is about creating opportunity. Phasing out is about responding to past context. And so, as a member of the city, I believe that we can do great things. We can look to the future. So let's phase in other options for heating our home. But first, let's understand how we can get this right. Let's take action. Thank you for considering my comments.
Thank you very much. Councilor Mays?
Thanks for the presentation. Yeah, so I think I'm agreeing with your math on the methane, but which is why we flare the methane at present out of Brady, is that the carbon dioxide we're
Yes,
producing is not great, but it's certainly,
it's considerably less than methane emissions, which are really the worst of the worst.
yeah, okay, good, yes, I thought we were on the same page. Thank you.
See no other questions. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for listening.
Okay, next is Lila Asher, who's appearing in person.
Good morning.
Good morning, counselors and everyone else here in the room and joining us online. My name is Lila Asher, and I'm here today because as a young person and as a Winnipeg resident, I'm deeply concerned about the impact that climate change will have on our future and that it's already having. As a grad student at the University of Winnipeg, I study climate and energy policy, so I'm here to speak in favor of the motion for a report for item 4, the same one everyone else is talking about. And there's just a few points that I wanted to bring to your attention. The first is that, as you're aware, a few years back, the city commissioned a study to determine how it can reach its net zero by 2050 commitment. This is published as the Community Energy Investment Roadmap. And if you look at the net zero scenario in the Community Energy Investment Roadmap, it does show a phase out of natural gas with a pretty steep decline between 2020 and 2030. That's like this decade that we're in right now. We should see natural gas usage declining, and that's primarily from energy efficiency improvements to buildings, as well as electrification of heating, according to the SEER model. And then that decline is not happening if you look at the data. So if you look at provincial data on natural gas usage, which is available from Statistics Canada, it's pretty flat in terms of natural gas usage provincially. There's no equivalent data for the city that's publicly available, but without any city-specific actions, we can pretty safely assume that the city's natural gas usage looks similar. And so this discrepancy speaks to the urgent need to do something to get back on that trajectory that has been modeled for us about how the city will reach its net zero commitment. This year also, the Community Energy Investment Roadmap also outlines a few suggestions for how the city can make this happen in terms of changes to new and existing buildings, such as through incentives or maybe a neighborhood retrofit pilot. But the important thing to know is that these are suggestions about like how we might reach that goal, and it's just the like specific policy details about how the city can implement it isn't there. And the provincial context is also different from when the Community Energy Investment Roadmap was published. There's a new administration. They recently published the Manitoba's Affordable Energy Plan with a lot of actions that the province is intending to take, and some of which they're already like starting to take in this regard. And so there are many actors that are working on this issue. And there are some questions about what the city has a jurisdiction to do compared to the province. But as others have spoken to, like, this is not something that the city can do alone. This is something that will take collaborative action between all parties. So the federal government, the provincial government, private sector actors, Manitoba Hydro, Efficiency Manitoba, everyone will need to work together to make this happen in a way that works for residents. And so the report called for in this motion will address some of those information gaps for how the city can translate its commitment into action in concert with these other government and private sector actors. We know that current buildings, as others have mentioned, rely on natural gas for heating. It's really common in the city. And so that, like, as we transition, of course, we can't sacrifice like people's ability to be comfortable in their homes or create any disproportionate financial burden on marginalized communities. So the recommendations that this report will be able to bring forward will help provide a basis for prudent action that will enable us to understand how to use public money efficiently and which tools will work specifically in the Winnipeg context. Thank you. That's all my comments. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Any more questions at this time? Thank you very much for your presentation. Thank you.
Okay, next is Mike Bagomary, who's speaking in support of the item. Mike, we've just asked you to start your video and you have up to 10 minutes for your presentation.
Good morning, Mike.
Good morning. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Councillor, first, I am speaking in support for an important reason. I am a young man who has never known a month in which it is on a global scale. I am 29 years old. In the last average month, according to weather records,
Mike,
September 1992.
we're going to just hang tight. We're going to turn your video off here. You're still going to be with us, is my understanding. We'll just have your audio and see if it's better. You were breaking up there. So please go ahead.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
As I was saying, the last cooler than average month globally was September 1992. Happened more than 2 years before I was born. So I am disappointed that the world has gotten to this stage.
Mike, your connection may be a little bit shoddy on one of our ends here. How's it looking, your signal strength on your side?
Well, it should be. It's not. It is all I can say.
All right, Mike, we'll give it another shot here. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. Then I'm going to live in a world where the cost of living due to average climate change globally is going to be much higher than in previous years. Climate change is here. A reputable scientist and scientific body has agreed that it is here, as well as that of fossil fuels caused it. The best way not to is not to use fossil fuels. You can never make the air tight, and I should know this partly because in studying to become an energy advisor to get that certification later, I will be part of the solution, not the problem. I will money and the climate at the point of action. But it is not just the point of action that needs to be considered. The production of natural gas or more accurately, fossil is also a huge problem for our environment. Canadian-derived natural gas is heavily fracked. This process is linked to effects on human health. Communities in Alberta and BC where gas is extracted have unusual diseases and illnesses than they would have otherwise. Lymphoma, leukemia, birth defects, and asthma. Special risk of respiratory diseases like lung cancer and silicosis, exposure to radiation. Because fossil gas often sits side by side with thorium and uranium, among other radioactive elements in the atmosphere. Moreover, chemicals used in fracking stay in drinking water, where they eventually called forever chemicals, per and polyfluoroalkyls, which cause cancers and birth defects, to which I alluded just a moment ago. Breathing in natural gas, especially when it continues to power stoves, causes high rates of asthma among end users. Getting sick from a highly avoidable cost to the healthcare system. If we phase out natural gas and phase in and geothermal, well, we will fix one big problem. We'll be healthier. We will have opportunity to do the things we want to do. I've studied quite a bit of climate policy I've been quite interested and I must say a bit disappointed how few people consider the social cost of carbon, which is an umbrella term for how climate change costs us money. Carbon is not a big thing. It's not a uniform thing, rather. It is a very big thing. The SCC is meant to has an impact on our ability to go from place to place, to transport goods and people, as well as to produce food, to live, to work. Everything that climate change does is not quite the same to all people. And climate change does.
You're breaking up quite a bit. I think it is showing that you have a weaker signal via the Zoom. You're cutting in.
Mike, could what I'll suggest here, I don't anticipate that you'll be able to fix your issue on your end right now, but if I could suggest that whatever notes you have there, if you could email them to the clerk in a timely fashion before we hear the item there and consider it, item number 4, we can review them. The clerk can disperse them to the committee. We can have a look at them and consider them in our deliberations. Because I don't think we're really capturing what you're trying to convey here.
Okay, the key points to make are that this is going to help greatly cost of living if we phase out natural gas and geothermal.
Mike, I'm sorry, we can't hear your presentation. So if you would like to send the information to the email that I responded to you with, or reply to my email that provides the details for the meeting, if you're able to send those notes in before the committee considers the item, we could publish them in the minutes, but we can't hear your presentation.
All right. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate your time this morning, and we'll look for that email. We can move on to the next delegation.
Okay. Next is Pat Wally, Seniors for Climate Manitoba, who's speaking in person.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
And thanks for allowing me to speak. I'm a member of Seniors for Climate, which is a community of seniors from across the country that are concerned about the climate crisis that we're facing. We started in the spring of 2024 with about 20 people and grew very rapidly. On October 1st, we held 76 events across the country, from coast to coast. And we had over 6,000 attendees at those events. In Winnipeg, we had a very successful climate action expo at the Forks. Future generations have the right to fresh water and clean air to breathe. When one of my granddaughters was 10, she matter-of-factly stated that she was sure she would be needing a gas mask to go outside when she was my age. This shocked me enough to realize I must do everything I can possibly do to increase action on climate. Please take a moment to ask yourself what you want for future generations. Today, you can start making additions by commissioning this study. The City of Winnipeg adopted the Climate Action Plan in 2018 and the Community Energy Investment Roadmap in 2020. Actions, however, on these have been very limited to date. You have the opportunity today to start the process on what these plans consider the primary strategy for reducing greenhouse gas emissions. The studies identified switching from heating and transportation systems from fossil fuels to electricity as the primary strategy, as this causes 44% of the city's emissions. You, as elected officials, have a responsibility to anticipate change and plan for the future. Continuing to add new buildings that rely on natural gas at a time when the energy sector is moving in the opposite direction puts residents at risk financially, guaranteeing higher retrofit costs for homeowners in the future. Realize this is a very complex issue with multiple options available that need to be studied, evaluated, and in this study. Adapting heating for existing city buildings, requiring all new city facilities to be free of greenhouse gases. Changing zoning for new housing developments so that natural gas lines are not allowed, perhaps installing geothermal instead. Why would we continue to allow natural gas lines with a lifespan of many decades to be installed if that's not the fuel of the future? Seniors make up 25% of the population. Studies have shown that 78% of seniors support their governments taking climate action. Seniors are willing to support their governments when they take action. It's time for you to step up and get this necessary process started. Please do that today when you vote, because later may be too late.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Councilor Mace?
I think the energy roadmap was adopted in 2022. I think you said 2020, minor point, but,
yeah.
but
Oh, it may have been the initial, that was the number I saw. I don't
yeah,
know.
I think the earlier motion about natural gas was kind of referred into that process. So here we are some years later. So, okay. Just wanted to.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for the work you folks are doing in the community there. It's much appreciated. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, next is Josh Friesen, also speaking with respect to report 4 and joining us in person today.
Good morning.
Morning. Thank you very much for having me here. I'm going to start with a little bit of a brief intro and just to kind of explain where I'm coming from. So I would call myself a sustainable home builder, so this topic's very important to me. It hits close to home. Member of many organizations, Derek here in Biz for Climate, we're a member of their organization, Sustainable Home Building. I'm sitting on the National Home Builders Emissions and Resilience Board, so this issue today hits very close to home for me. In the past, we have advised our clients that natural gas has 65 times the carbon footprint of electricity for heating and cooling. And we pushed air source heat pumps, still proud of that option. I think air source heat pumps are great, especially some of the new cold climate ones. And we wanted to electrify at all costs. What changed? I am speaking out opposed to the wording of this motion. I don't think that the scope of the motion is correct. I think phasing out natural gas is probably too narrow of a focus at this point. So I'm going to go through my presentation and I welcome more conversation because this obviously is a very difficult motion to work through. What changed? So I have an engineer friend with Manitoba Hydro who started pushing back on some of those numbers, just very annoyingly at first, just kind of pushing back on my excitement for the Mitsubishi Zuba. I started conversations with their energy resource planning department and their GHG analysis engineers, and they actually don't use a very clean number for our electricity usage here in Manitoba. There's reasons for that. Brandon is our generator here in Manitoba for when peak demand for our electricity grid is too high. And when there's droughts and when all of those kind of issues, Brandon gets fired up. Brandon is a natural gas generating plant that generates electricity at about 60 to 80% efficiency. That's kind of where I understand their numbers are. And so the other part of Manitoba Hydro is that any electricity we don't use in province gets shipped out to offset dirtier grids. So it goes to grids where some of them are still burning coal, some of them are using natural gas to fire for electricity. So any reduction in electricity usage that we can partake in here in Manitoba goes to offset worse emitters. So they actually use 750 tons per gigawatt hour, which when you consider that your natural gas furnace is 95% efficient at heating your home, it makes it about, gas is about a quarter the carbon footprint on Manitoba Hydro's numbers as electricity is for heating your homes. Current trends are that GHG emissions in the natural gas sector are declining, is my understanding. There's people smarter than me who would have better answers for that. But on national carbon estimating levels, we're using projected 2031 to 2035 electricity greenhouse gas factors, and we're using actual 2022 gas factors. So there's a bit of a discrepancy there in maybe our rose-colored glasses on this one. I agree that climate action is important. It's very important. I agree that Winnipeg has unique challenges in how we address our carbon footprint as well, just with the temperature swings we deal with. And I agree that this is an important thing for the city to talk about and provide leadership on. I'm not sure that phasing out natural gas is the way to do it. And again, there's lots of conversation that needs to happen around it. We've heard talk of ground source heat pumps, and we've heard talk of other ways to get electricity playing a smaller role, but still phasing in. I liked the way you said phasing in, and there's lots of opportunity there for that. So in my mind, pointing out problems with it isn't where a presentation should end. And so I think there are solutions for this motion that involve a little bit more than just the focus on phasing out natural gas. The primary thing we can do is build better. That's the primary thing we can do now. We can adopt Tier 4 energy codes, and that pays back within 15 years. Most builders would claim to be able to build homes that last 15 years or longer. So I think that payback period is very much within the realm of possibility. So insulate, cut down your heating, cooling loads throughout the year, not just, we're talking about natural gas primarily as it is used to heat homes. But insulating your home also cuts down on electricity use in summer as well too. So insulation, there's comfort with that. There's lower demand on your utility systems. You get smaller systems, less maintenance, air sealing, and being judicious in your use of power, whether that's your buses, whether that's your businesses. I think a focus on reducing our global carbon footprint is what we need here, not just on reducing the focus of individual houses, individual building carbon footprints. We need to focus on global carbon footprint because it's a global problem. And to do that, phasing out natural gas, I think, is the wrong step at current. So I want to close with, it's Frozen 2. I don't know how many of you have kids or grandkids, but it's this movie where these kids are walking through a bit of a conundrum. There's lots of things they could do and they don't know what they need to do. But the song that they sing, and you're lucky I won't sing it for you, but is that they need to remember to do the next right thing. And where there's a lot of conversation here and there's a lot of variables and a lot of things that are hard to peg down and hard to exactly know what the right answer is, we have the responsibility to do the next right thing here. So thank you very much for taking time to hear me. Looking forward to it. Thank you.
In 60 seconds or less, can you outline the difference between air source and ground source heat pump?
Yes. Air source heat pump, is my timer running? Yeah. Air source heat pump finds ways to extract heat energy out of the air and transfer that in or out of the house, depending if it's cooling or heating the house. Ground source heat pump takes the heat energy out of the ground. So the ground maintains that kind of stable 7 degrees over winter. And so you're allowed to, or you do see a lot more efficiency in ground source heat pumps than air source. However, from a residential perspective, they're quite cost prohibitive. Like ground source is geothermal. So geothermal is a utility, love it, all for it. It's been tough. We've priced out quite a few units on our homes and because they're so well insulated and so airtight, there's so little savings going to a ground source heat pump that it doesn't make economic sense on a house by house basis to put in these big systems.
Sorry, Councilor Mason.
No, I was at a conference almost exactly a year ago and they're talking about, sort of, it's interesting, sort of, here's a diagram of where it would make sense for geothermal, and then they showed, okay, here's a campus where it has to look at with all these buildings here and one building at a different elevation, quarter mile away or something, right? And they said, okay, that just don't do that, basically, the looping, so there's some complexity to it, but thank you for that.
Councilor Dobson.
The air source heat pumps, what temperature range do they work at generally?
The ones so there's air source heat pumps and there's cold climate ones. We work a lot with Mitsubishi. They make a specific cold climate one. So their coefficient of performance will be around 1.5 at about -25, somewhere around there. They'll work down to -30, which is when they switch over to being about on par with electricity. According to Manitoba Hydro's number, your heat pump system needs to have about a 4-time coefficient of performance to have a smaller carbon footprint than gas.
Looking at, please.
You just mentioned 4, but earlier you said 1.5.
Right, so the actual, their performance level at -2, so it kind of ramps down, right? Like at 15 degrees, your air source heat pump, pardon me, at 15 degrees, your air source heat pump is at about that 4-time coefficient of performance. And then the scale, as it gets colder, the air source heat pump gets less efficient. And so its efficiency tails off at about -30 is where they're breaking even.
Please.
Another question, the cost versus putting in a traditional high efficiency furnace.
The cost so when you have access to gas, the cost for the cost is the same, but when you have access to gas, the cost for a Mitsubishi probably pays off in about 15 years. as opposed to a gas furnace. And now that's doing a bit of projecting, and we're stuck doing a lot of projecting if we're talking about 2030 numbers, and there's lots of political swings that are going to happen with carbon tax, without carbon tax. I mean, that's a political reality that we're going to have to deal with. But it's about $8,000 to $10,000 more than a gas or electric system. If you're out of the city and you don't have access to gas, then they're no brainers. Like, they'll pay back in 5 to 7 years.
Okay, I'm good. Giving us a bit of a better understanding from your experience with gas versus electric furnaces in your house, is, I suppose, what would be the downside to, I think we've heard what the downside is to a natural gas furnace, but what would be the downside to an electrical furnace should we require everyone to switch over? The reason I ask this is because you got into the Brandon generating energy. I'm concerned that there would be other areas that we would have to potentially buy from that would be not clean energy.
Right. Yeah, and that's where, so Manitoba Hydro did a resource planning document as well too. And their prediction of the electrical loads that we have in our province are going to keep climbing pretty drastically. And our current generating power, and I mean, we can talk about hydro finances and all their equipment and all that. They paint a pretty dire picture. And so my concern is that if we push even more electrification, that we will be forced to run generators more or buy from dirtier grids. Failing replacement with solar has been mentioned. Solar is a great option for decentralizing grid. And there are other options as well too. But I think that speaks a little bit to the, like you said, phasing part of the conversation, that doing the next right thing in my mind is we're premature to start phasing out gas. We're probably not premature to start phasing in better options, geothermal as a utility, solar.
And then just one final question from me here. You opened your presentation with narrowing the scope. Would you have any recommendations on looking at this current item number 4 in particular, and what you would narrow the scope on?
I think that the current wording of item number 4 is a very narrow scope. To talk about phasing out gas, I think that everyone in this room is very excited about reducing global carbon footprint. I think everyone in this room is excited about doing the next best thing for our grandkids, for our kids, for our community. And so I think that if there is a study that needs to move forward, I think it needs to be larger in scale. It needs to be what are the best ways that Winnipeg can become a more sustainable city and reduce our carbon footprint. I think that talking about gas is an important part of that conversation, but it's too narrow in scope to have the motion be just around gas, in my opinion.
Okay, and without being too centric here to your line of work, you did mention about adopting Tier 4 standards. What would that look like? And again, just so everybody's crystal clear here, would that be a Winnipeg initiative or would that be a provincial initiative?
Ideally, it's a provincial level. There's challenges with Winnipeg implementing a Tier 4 and then builders just go build Tier 1 in Grand Point. Right now, Manitoba has adopted a Tier 1 approach to the to the National Energy Code. Most builders are already building at Tier 2. Lots are at Tier 3. To build at Tier 4, you basically need to put a thermal blanket around your house, so 2-inch styrofoam around your house. Control your air tightness, and instead of having the cellulose truck or the fiberglass truck pump R50 into the attic, have them pump R80 into the attic. And then triple pane windows, which again, 80% of builders are doing triple pane windows. And so those changes, when we ran numbers as Sustainable Building Manitoba, when we ran numbers on that was a 15-year payback to go from a Tier 1 house to a Tier 4 house.
No other questions. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Open to more conversation.
And our last delegation today is Lana Goldberg from Stand.Earth. Lana is joining us via Zoom today. Hi, Lana. You have up to 10 minutes for your presentation.
Good morning.
Good morning. Hi, Honorable Chair and committee members. Thank you for having me. My name is Lana Goldberg. I'm a climate campaigner with Stand.Earth, an international environmental advocacy organization. Among our work, we support the development of local climate policies across North America, and specifically building policies in Canada. And from this work, we know that municipalities across North America are passing green building policies. In the US, over 100 local governments have introduced policies that are phasing out gas in buildings. In Canada, there is a ballooning number of municipalities passing such policies as well. In British Columbia, 30 municipalities have adopted the highest tiers of the province's zero carbon step code, which requires new buildings to use non-fossil fuel space and water heating. More than half of these municipalities will be using non-emitting heating equipment in new buildings by the first quarter of 2025. Vancouver has also passed a building emissions performance standard, which paves the way to transition existing buildings to electric heating. Moving to Quebec, the City of Montreal and the smaller communities of Prévost, Candiac, and Mont-Saint-Hilaire have all passed building bylaws to prevent the use of polluting gas systems in new buildings. Another 83 municipalities that make up the metropolitan community of Montreal have decided to end the installation of fossil fuel heating systems in new buildings. Along to Ontario, about 15 municipalities have adopted green development standards for new buildings with limits on heating equipment emissions. Several of these municipalities, like Toronto, have timelines and emissions limits that will effectively phase out the use of gas in new buildings by 2030. Toronto is also currently working on a building emissions performance standard for existing buildings, which would set the stage for the adoption of electric heating across the city. These examples show that municipalities in these three provinces have the authority to introduce building policies that go beyond provincial and national building codes. We have conducted and examined legal jurisdictional analyses and found that other provinces in Canada also allow municipalities to introduce local climate policies related to buildings. These include New Brunswick, Newfoundland and Labrador, and PEI. Preliminary reviews show that there are also such pathways in Manitoba. So it would be well worth it for the city of Winnipeg to examine these possibilities for the city so it can join other municipalities in taking concrete climate action, especially as building decarbonization is becoming an inevitable future, making it prudent for Winnipeg to start preparing now. We can see this movement towards building decarbonization at the provincial level as well. As you've heard today, Quebec will not allow gas systems in most new and existing buildings in 2026 and plans to phase out gas entirely by 2040. And BC is requiring zero carbon new buildings in 2030 and will require high efficiency equipment beginning in 2030 as well. Across the country, developers are already building green housing and are swearing by this approach. There are indeed many benefits to building green from the start. In terms of emissions, there are, of course, a few options, as we've heard today, for building heating. In terms of the option of heat pumps, we know that they would result in significantly lower pollution. This is because heat pumps are typically about 300% more efficient than gas furnaces, so they require less energy to run on. And of course, heat pumps run on electricity, which in Manitoba is not high polluting. This means that using heat pumps would result in much lower emissions than the use of natural gas. Yes, it will require more electricity, but provinces across Canada are planning for increased demand, which is occurring across the board due to the electrification of transportation as well as buildings. And it is possible to increase power generation and to ensure that it continues to stay clean. In terms of some other benefits, since heat pumps are more efficient than gas furnaces and run on electricity, residents would have lower monthly energy bills. And since heat pumps double as cooling devices, all residents would have access to proper cooling in the hot summer months. With recent advances in technology, heat pumps can now heat homes in the coldest of temperatures, including in northern Canada. And heat pumps don't emit poisonous chemicals like gas does, and they can even filter indoor air, which is becoming more important as we deal with wildfire smoke. Equipping homes with heat pumps from the outset or some other clean way of heating homes like district energy means that we would avoid the cost and hassle of organizing retrofits in the future, which is difficult and expensive for residents. So building without gas has also been shown to be cheaper or the same as gas buildings, partly because there's no need for new gas lines to be installed. And for the same reason, housing in new areas can be built more quickly because pipelines don't need to be built first. So you can see that these benefits would help residents, but it would also help the community as a whole in terms of a reduction in emissions. We've heard that currently buildings account for 44% of the city's emissions, and addressing building emissions would significantly lower community emissions, and it is actually one of the most cost-effective ways to do so. And tackling new buildings specifically would also prevent an increase in emissions from the construction of new housing with gas heating. In conclusion, we would encourage this committee to approve the motion and move forward on examining the possibilities to phase out natural gas from buildings. This will help the city make educated decisions and may lead to the city being able to lower emissions, make life more affordable for residents, and make Winnipeg a more equitable and healthy city. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Ms. Goldberg. Seeing no questions at this time, I appreciate you making some time for us this morning. Have a good day.
Thank you.
And that appears to be the end of our delegations this morning. Thank you very much for everybody to join us this morning and present. I believe we can move into our reports now. We have 7 items today. I'll ask the clerk to.
Did we move number 4 up a bit? That all the delegates are here on 4.
Then I would suggest we have a pause so that I can read the one that was just
Sure.
emailed to me.
Okay. Never mind. Just two of them will be very quick.
Okay. Item number 1, I'll have the clerk introduce.
Item 1 is the semi-annual report on single-use plastics.
Thank you. And I apologize. Good morning to members of the public service here this morning. I apologize off the hop not introducing. Please introduce yourselves to the gallery here.
Director of Water and Waste Tim Shanks, accompanied by Manager of Engineering Services, Ms. Cynthia Weeb, and the Manager of our Office of Sustainability, Becky Rabbits. Yeah, sorry. So this first report, the semi-annual verbal report on single-use plastics ban. This is a kind of a legacy standing item we keep reporting on since it was introduced about 4 years ago. There's actually no update since our last report in May. So, you know, essentially at that time, we informed SBC like we're periodically, you know, reviewing opportunities to work our green meetings plan into training and to work some more awareness into our procurement training proposal P cards. But essentially, there's been no change in the last few months. And what we'd like to recommend is this continuation of this annual kind of report or semi-annual report and incorporation of any new updates to this topic. We can incorporate it in our annual combined comprehensive integrated waste management strategy report, the CIWMS report. That's an annual report that speaks to our whole waste management strategy. And if there was any new developments in this topic, we would certainly put it in that written report annually, and that would kind of save us from really low content verbal report.
I have no objections to that. I don't see anybody jumping up on the left-hand side of the table here. I don't want to say mission accomplished on this, but I would tend to believe that the use of plastic bags has dramatically been reduced over the years here.
Yeah, like this was prompted by like the federal legislative changes on limiting, or phasing, stepping down the use of some plastic items. And there was a schedule with that legislation of, milestone dates where you were unable to, import or manufacture and then sale and use. And I think the last deadline is next year for the straws, I believe. So it's been working through that, and really most of our action was on the front end, preparing some, green meeting plans and that sort of thing internally. So.
So that would change our recommendation, I believe, before us here today. Did we catch the wording on public services suggestion?
So if the committee is supportive, you could move a motion to receive the verbal report as information and further direct that any new updates be part of the comprehensive integrated waste management strategy annual report.
You have a mover on that?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, Councilor Robson moves. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And that is carried. Thank you. Item number 2, the annual report of biosolids treatment capacity for the city of Winnipeg.
Yes, so this is quite a different report here. I just want to frame, this is a regular kind of standing report. We do provide an update twice a year, specific to capacity. We provide a verbal one closer to mid-year around June, and then we provide a written one by the end of the year, which is before you today. I just wanted to frame like the regular reporting we've had on this for several years kind of I want to acknowledge, does create a bit of a risk of it becoming routine and perhaps masking the criticality of this project. And we do talk about this project in multiple reports to different committees. We report on it quarterly to SBC Finance. There's other related wastewater treatment upgrade reports that we talk about regularly, this committee and media, this sort of thing. So it is very much, I very much want to emphasize that this is a critical capacity issue that's been correctly identified by others recently and in the media. We do, as a city, we have identified this particular biosolids upgrade is the #1 project on our infrastructure priority plan from 2020. That's a testament to the visibility of it, but also the consequence of it. It's a very we talk about a lot of the stuff in water and waste as being regulatory driven. Of course, this is regulatory driven, but it also has an overlap with capacity issues, growth. So it is a very high priority for everyone in the public service. And we, in this, as I said, almost routine report, as we count down our estimate of our best estimate for remaining capacity, we did add a table this time around to try to help highlight or at least better communicate the various factors here, because we don't calculate capacity. It's not an easy calculation. It's not like we look at, we have to translate it. We try to translate it into, people equivalents when we talk about population equivalents, because that's a good way to communicate it in terms of scope. But in technical terms, it's not like we add up number of people that have moved to Winnipeg and take that off some tally. We're monitoring the performance of the actual treatment process. It's very technical, but the process itself has different aspects that you monitor: retention time and digesters, sludge quality, this sort of thing. And that sort of thing we can measure, and we try to trend that. And it's influenced by the different types of the different wastewater strength that comes to the plant, and the different solids that are produced at the other two plants that are trucked to the plant. So, as I said in this table, like we are working on some things that will. Obviously, we're working on the new digesters. That project is up and running now. We've got our proponent selected earlier this year. We're in the process of the progressive design progressive design build project delivery. We're in the design phase of that now. So we've got our partners and we're working towards that. So we're airborne on that project. We're working on that. That's good. But there are other things related to digestive capacity that could help gain some capacity, but also hurt a little bit. So that's what we've tried to kind of categorize in that table on page, I guess the second page here of the written report, where the Headworks project, the giant construction project that you may see as you drive by the plant right now, that involves improvements in the screening and grit removal. That helps reduce the production of sludge in the first place. So that is very much a plus in the plus column to help us. There's also similar, screening and grit removal work at the West End plant that will help reduce sludge coming from there and give us a little bit more room in digesters. The completion of the South End plant, the implementation of the biological phosphorus treatment process there produces less sludge inherently, different sludge. So that's going to help us as well as that continues in its progress there. We're doing some dewatering there as well. That helps. Newpick has some dewatering projects that's gonna start shortly this winter. There's also things that are not necessarily helpful for the city overall, a lower expected growth in customers and residential and commercial. That's not, city wants to grow, but the one positive part of that is that it helps gain us some space in digestive capacity. Same thing, with a large sewer intensive industrial commercial customers, if they close, as it happened in the last 2 years, that actually helps us with capacity. And aside from those things, ongoing, like the folks operating the plants and our planners and support staff are always working at operational adjustments to try to run the plant as best as possible, as efficiently as possible, which helps this overall goal. All that being said, there is another column to this table. There are some things that impact us negatively. The interim phosphorus removal, which is a great project, absolutely helping us, try to meet our phosphorus limits through a temporary method with a chemical instead of biological is great for the phosphorus coming out of the plant for sure. The catch is that it actually creates more sludge than normal, so that kind of hurts us a little bit in capacity. We are looking to optimize that to minimize the negative impact there, because the net gain there is great with the phosphorus removal. That's why we've done it. The upgrades of the South End plant, we're very excited about that being complete. The plant there, actually, part of it was upsizing it in sense to capture more flows. Large storms, in the past, we may have to bypass during large storms. The new plant there will be able to capture those storms. That's great. It's great for the environment. Fortunately, that actually captures more sewage, which means we treat more sewage, which means you can generate a little more sludge. So that's technically in the negative column here, digester capacity. And any higher rates in the growth in the service area, or if a new customer shows up, can impact this capacity. So there's a lot of stuff, there's a lot of moving parts here. I just don't want this to be lost in the routine reporting mix. It's a very critical project. We're very focused on it. We're working very hard on it, and we're going to continue to update SPC and council as we get through further milestones. So that's I know, Cynthia, we do have messaging. We like to try to explain how this is. The plant is not a simple mechanical process. It's like the analogy we always use is it's like a living organism. There's biological processes there. Its stomach is digesters. It's reaching capacity. We're looking to improve this. The project's complicated. It's like a live organ transplant. If there's any questions on the nature of the project, we're certainly important.
Maybe I'll just quickly highlight that, talk about the remaining capacity, because Kim spoke to all the things that do contribute to, or things that could help extend or decrease. But, compared to last year, we're currently at about 4 to 6 years, and this is estimate only, of remaining digester capacity. It's about a year less than last year. So the growth was, as we were anticipating. And we estimate that this is, approximately 60,000 people equivalent. 60, yeah, which is 10,000 less than last year.
I do have questions, but I also saw Councillor May's,
Yeah, thank you. By way of introduction, good to be back at this committee, but frankly, good to be anywhere. The last, before exile, the last standing committee I was at of any sort was in July, ironically, when we were dealing with award of contract to do biosolids. So, I will say when I was chair of this committee, and I was frustrated that Councillor Gilroy, the former chair, wanted on the committee. And I was wrong in that. Councillor Gilroy was great on this committee, I have to say, when she had this seat, when she was no longer the chair. So I want to thank Councillor Gilroy. My goal here is not to undermine the chair in any way or to question what he's doing. My goal is to keep asking questions of what we're doing as a city and of the public admin. So I'm going to start doing that. So I'm glad to be back on this committee. This report is nothing new. This report comes, the numbers have been, it's ironic to see it in the media now, because for years we've been saying 5 to 7 years, and it'll take us 5 to 7 years to build the thing. And then suddenly it's now front page news that it's, oh my God, it's going to take, we have 4 to 6 years left, and it's going to take us till 2030 to build it. We've been saying that for years. There's literally nothing new. There's nothing inconsistent. Michelle Petkout is the authority on this stuff. Reports from her again. So, two things though. One is to push back a little, the report that was referenced, the 2020 infrastructure report, which we voted on at council in December of 2019. If you look at page 18 of that, this is the number one priority. It also says main project driver and then big print growth. So not really provincial regulation forcing us to do this, unlike some other stuff, the CSO work or the phosphorus nitrogen, that's provincial regulation. I think, frankly, if I was with the province, I'd be saying, you guys didn't tax enough to do this. You shouldn't have been taking that dividend, whatever. Like, it's growth. It's a growth related project. Some of it regulation, but we ourselves said it was primarily a growth problem. So hopefully we'll get some provincial or federal money to keep it going, but it's good, it's the top priority, but let's be honest here, a lot of this is related, the main driver is growth. So former member of council said to me, well, what are they talking about? You can treat it at south and west. That's true, but the rest of the sentence is all the sludge has got to come up to north end. Like the reason why in 2030, if we're out of room at north, and you can't build in Sault Ste. Vital or Waverly West and ship it to south is because all of the sludge has to go to north end to be treated. Question?
Yeah, that's correct. So we treat the liquid streams at each of the 3 treatment plants, and then the solid stream of the wastewater that all comes to the north end where we treat biosolids for the entire city.
Okay. And we're doing there was some work being done with distribution of biosolids. I mean, there was a whole separate project about biosolids being distributed on fields, but all of that's just like this is.
It's stable, yeah, like this material is essentially, well, the digester stabilizes the solids and we recover what's left over, the physical stabilized biosolid is what we, there's different rules to that, land application, or where you use some of it for soil fabrication for landfill cover. And so there's different rules depending on how stabilized that material is. There's different rules of what you can do with it. And so part of this upgrade is actually normalizing it to a higher class.
That's right, yeah.
To provide for more reuse as part of our kind of, long-term holistic goals too.
So that's not really the issue isn't what to do with, the issue is how we need the digester, we need the capacity to treat the stuff.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes, I keep hearing 4 to 6 years service left. My question is, the obvious one, are we gonna make it? Are we gonna be able to go for it? Like, next year, it's gonna be 3 to 5 years left.
Well, like I did take a look at the last, 3 or 4 years of reports here and consistently the back end has been to 2030. Like it's been 4 to 6, or 5 to 9, 5 to 8, 5 to 7, or 4 to now we're getting closer to that. The construction schedule, for our basalts project is 2030. Like I said, the capacity, I mean, that is the ultimate solution to our capacity issues and new digesters for sure. The schedule is what it is, looks like we're gonna make it. These other factors we're working on may give us more time. So we're not hanging our hat completely on, oh yeah, that construction is gonna be done by 2030. We're working on the other things.
And maybe I can just add, it's not, the digesters aren't a finite capacity, so it's not a tin cup. And, you can fill it up and then one more drop and we're done. What we're looking at is trying to operate it in the most optimal way. So, if you overfill it a little, there's different things you can do. You can, we could cut back on some of our internal phosphorus. So it's not like there's a solid point you can't go past. It just becomes the system's operating less efficiently. There is a point, of course, where, it's just, you're at risk of your system just falling apart. It's, I guess, yeah, I'm trying to get through that. It's not a finite point, and there are things that we can do, but we want to treat it as optimally as possible, which is why it's really critical that we get this project going.
You had a great analogy before the other meeting about it being, this process has a bunch of factors, like your blood pressure, your cholesterol, these things can start to get out of spec.
You can say that, my only concern was if you're going to 4 to 6 and it's supposed to be done in 2030, in 28 or 29, it's gonna be 0 to 2, meaning we have no capacity left. Now, I want to take it one step further. We also service other municipalities. If their growth rate goes, for some reason just picks up, what's the plan for that?
Well, at the moment, we don't reserve capacity. So that is our current, the current way we operate. You are correct. There are RNs and at this moment in time, they contribute about, 4% of the sludge loading. So it is a small part. 2 of the municipalities do have limits to them and the other 2 do not. So, if they exceeded.
2 of them have hard written limits in the agreements.
Correct,
The other
yeah.
ones have clauses that wouldn't effectively, we could.
So we'll have the ability to say, slow down,
Yes.
guys,
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
because we're near our max.
Yes.
Okay, that's the question I have. Thanks.
Just for clarity, this is the third different potential limit, right? You've got this limit. You've also got the long-running CSO problem that you have to build in a certain way in the CSO districts. And then there's the other thing that we spent the last 19 hours, how long were we in that meeting? The limit of hydraulic, the sewer limit, you could be in River Park South, right? You're way outside the combined sewer area. This thing could get done and you still might have trouble building because there's just not enough room in that neighborhood. The pipe that's coming east of St. Anne's the space is gone. So this isn't gonna solve that issue, right? You're still gonna have different parts of the city unable to go because there's not enough capacity.
This is working on the treatment side of things. The other one you're speaking to is the collection system.
Sure.
So there's limitations in the collection system in certain parts of the city. The treatment is, citywide for the biosolids, and that's what this is speaking to.
Thank you.
Yeah, what's stuck out to me here is the capacity limits for the surrounding RMs that do not exist. And obviously we have no say on their growth rate. And then as Councillor Mays alluded to, the meetings that we just went through approving new zoning malls and corridors, that's going to call for exponential growth in the city of Winnipeg, hopefully. I guess my concern is 4 to 6 years at 60,000 people capacity could, fill up pretty quick, no pun intended there. So is there a point in time where we have to consider cutting off the RMs?
Academically, yes, like at an extreme, certainly, but yeah, like we don't see that in the short term right now because like, again, they're very small loading on it, but if it came to that, yes, we can cancel agreements. We can exercise clauses in 2 of those agreements. We can cancel the other agreements. There's that flexibility. But yeah, as as we get closer to that deadline, it's a projection of performance of the process, right? And so, translating it into years, timeline or people equivalents is very difficult, but is kind of the only language we really can use in terms of communicating this. So, yeah, I'm not sure if I answered your question. I guess it was like, I mean, yes, we can, if we had to, we would take measures to restrict, to protect the overall process to a reasonable point.
And how quickly would that come up on us? Where potentially you'd have to come to this committee or council and say, we have no other choice.
I think, I mean, there's a lot of hypotheticals, but an example I can think, if there was a really wastewater intensive industry that was going through the approval process where we would flag, hey, this is not going to work.
And that's one of my concerns here, seeing Rosser there with Centerport as, growing, and we're putting in new pipe to further expand it. I mean, the reality is we only have so much capacity. And I'm assuming our primary goal would be to service Winnipeg.
At this point, we don't reserve capacity, so it is on a first come, first served basis. That's how we currently do it, but
And I know, we are working as fast as we can on this project, in terms of, if you just step back from it, I mean, this project, plant upgrades themselves, the public service has created a completely unique, project delivery structure. We've got a long-term strategic partner with the largest water and wastewater company in the world, with Veolia. And, we've got a different, project governance structure, a whole setup, this very large budgets, as you guys all know, to deliver this new progressive design build delivery. We are moving full speed ahead, flank speed ahead on this project. So that's, I don't want to say the background, it's in the foreground in this report, but we are working as fast as we can to work on this capacity while we're trying these other things here to help the overall context. So.
And how often are these agreements reviewed with the RMs when it comes to financial piece of it? Supply and demand, it looks like here, little supply.
There are conditions in the agreements for there's quality limits and volume limits on the agreements. We do they submit sampling, there's the technical monitoring of what's coming in. But in terms of the overall agreement at the time, I believe we just renewed St. Andrews. We just renewed one of them. I think there's 5-year agreements. We have to get back to it.
they all have they're all reviewed at different times, but that's certainly something we could get. 5 years is pretty typical.
I guess not to go too far down the rabbit hole, but I mean, I hate hearing about how affordable it is to live outside of the city and not have to pay, or sorry, rather the reference to how property taxes are so high in the city of Winnipeg and fees and whatever, because potentially it's not reflective of the cost that they're paying for the servicing from Winnipeg are appropriate.
Well, they do pay the wastewater fee.
Oh, yeah, I know.
They're paying the same rates plus a little bit there's a connection fee and I believe there's another fee in there. So they are paying the same rates we are. So they're contributing to the same
Right.
Fundraising, I probably want to call it
Yeah.
that, for our plant, plus a little bit of, additional, connection, administrative fees.
Yeah.
So.
I hear you. I just don't know if that plus is big enough at this point in time, but any other questions at all? Okay. Do you have any movers?
I'll move the public service recommendation that we received the report as information.
Thank you, Councilor Mays. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's carried.
Just note for committee members on that last item, the current path does this is as going to council, but this committee has jurisdiction.
Okay, thank you. Solid waste utility financial plan and rate model.
Yes, this is a request for an extension. This report is prompted by a part of the last year's budget that we were to come through council with a fully sustainable financial plan for the solid waste utility. We're asking for an extension here of up to 90 days because we want to table at the same time as our adjustments to our request to adjust the water and sewer rate report. So that's the request.
90-day request.
Right. Oh, sorry. So that's when you're anticipating we were just talking about this in one of these internal meetings the last few days, the rate report on water and sewer rates. So that's anticipated not next month, but within 90 days.
Fine for January, but so say February, January, February, we're a little bit vague in this extension, up to 90 days.
Okay, no problem. That makes sense. So moved.
So these moves, request of extension up to 90 days be granted. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And that is also carried. Number 4, this is our reporting on tools and mechanisms to phase out natural gas use.
Yes, this is from our Climate Action Resilience Committee motion, and I'll turn it over to Becky for bringing.
Good morning, everybody. Slightly new group, so I wanted to give a little bit of background. So with this SBC Water Waste and the Environment, of course, there's a lot of water waste department content, but also this is where we talk very specifically about climate change. It's a bit unique in that climate action is a responsibility across the organization. So we will be hearing about things that go beyond the Water and Waste Department. The Climate Action and Resilience Committee was formed by council. It is coming up to the end of its very first year. And it's an ad hoc committee of council. It has 6 citizen members. It has a councilor chair, it's Councilor Mays, and the vice chair is a CAO or designate, and that's currently Deputy CAO Moira here. The committee has 3 areas of responsibility. So advising mayor and council on climate change issues, engaging the community to help shape the implementation of the community energy investment roadmap, updating the climate action plan and developing a resilient strategy, and supporting the work of the community in advancing climate action. So council created this committee really to create a mechanism for ongoing engagement with community on climate action. So it creates that bridge between council and community. One of the committee's responsibilities is to recommend through this SPC areas of research or work to be undertaken by the Winnipeg Public Service in connection to those areas of responsibility. So we're seeing that in this motion today. And because Councilor Mays pointed out, the Community Energy Investment Roadmap was adopted by Council in 2022. And just as a reminder, that Community Energy Investment Roadmap lays out how to meet Council's commitment to net zero emissions by 2050. So that was an intensive technical analysis and planning process where it brought in a lot of data from the city of Winnipeg, data from hydro, and data from other sources. And that was used to look at what the emissions are for different use types, different energy types. And so one of those things, of course, is buildings. So that's where we get the emissions numbers related to electricity and use of natural gas. So the Climate Action Resilience Committee just finished its first year, and thank you to all those committee members. And this is one of the motions that's come out of its first work, and it's looking forward to continue that work in 2025. So as we already heard today, buildings make up 44% of 2020's Winnipeg emissions. And this is primarily through the use of natural gas for space heating, and also heating water. The Community Energy Investment Roadmap identifies the need to phase out natural gas, but doesn't lay out the very specific tools and mechanisms that the city of Winnipeg itself can use to further that goal. The Community Energy Investment Roadmap takes a reduce, improve, switch approach. So reduce the need for energy inputs in the first place. So when we're looking at making houses very efficient, improving the systems that we do have. So we heard things about better insulation, triple pane windows, and then doing a fuel switch. So phasing out natural gas covers that whole spectrum of work. This motion that the Climate Action Resilience Committee has brought forward is looking at tools and mechanisms specifically for the city, because we've also heard that there are other actors at play looking at different areas of this energy transition. So looking at existing buildings, greenfield development, and infill development, and looking at tools, including things, but not limited to what is the city's jurisdictional authority, incentives or grants, bylaws, permitting and zoning, and land use planning. This motion is looking to the public service to report back in 180 days.
I have a couple of questions based on listening to all the delegates here. Going away from natural gas may not be a doable thing in this climate up here. If we had an adequate electrical supply, then maybe we could be talking that, but I don't think we have an adequate electrical supply. We're not even talking about plugging in all our electric vehicles that everyone's promoting. We start plugging in all our electrical vehicles and then plug in your electric furnace. I don't think that's doable. I don't think the electrical grid in Manitoba will handle it. That would be, of course, up to hydro to determine whether we had enough of that. I think it's great that if we re-insulated houses and we promoted putting in on a short gap measure, very high efficiency furnaces for those people that cannot do electrical, like within the city would make more sense. Outside the city, maybe not, I'm not sure. Yeah, so I have a lot of problems with this particular motion. I think it should be working with the other levels of government and letting them take the lead on this. And the reason I say that is because we went for, I believe it's tier 1 for our building codes, went for the lower level when we should have gone for a higher level. And that would have made it more efficient to go to electric or to go to heat pump, air source heat pump.
Yeah, I think you've touched on a lot of important points about how there's work that needs to be done by multiple different actors. So you've mentioned the province, and the province is responsible for adopting building codes. And talked about hydro, and hydro has a mandate to support the transition to a net zero economy. So they're looking at their planning processes for supplying energy to Manitoba and in that net zero scenario. And then this motion in particular is looking at what are the tools and the mechanisms available to the city within that spectrum of work that's being done. So acknowledging that which tier is adopted by the province and what is happening with hydro, what can the city do within its purview, knowing that we already have council direction to move towards net zero by 2050, which will require the decarbonization of the building sector. What are those tools and mechanisms that the city could potentially use as part of that?
Go ahead. Did you have a question? If not.
More discussion than question.
Okay. How familiar are you or the committee with the actual capacity limits with Manitoba Hydro? When it comes to supplying electricity?
Capacity of
Yeah.
hydro?
Yeah.
I know that I and the committee know that Manitoba Hydro is currently updating their integrated resource plan. So that's the integrated resource plan for 2025. The most recent one was for 2023. And that's looking at capacity for meeting energy needs within their mandate of supporting the move to net zero by 2050. So that's their capacity planning is happening in conjunction with knowing that all these other changes are happening as the entire economy is moving towards net zero by 2050.
I guess I'm just not confident after brief discussion last year around having more clean industry come to Winnipeg and Hydro's concerns around their ability to facilitate with their capacity issues or their unknowing of where they're at with their capacity. And I'm not saying that we're going to flip the switch here and everybody's going to go from natural gas to electrical. I know that this is electricity. I know that this is just reporting on tools and mechanisms, but would this potentially be premature to go down that path until we have all of the information before us?
So tools and mechanisms move towards net zero by getting out of natural gas for buildings. When you look at the community energy investment roadmap, which was adopted by council, is looking at reducing that need for the energy inputs to start with. And during that analysis, it was like with higher performance buildings, the amount of energy needed is greatly reduced. And so that is part of that ongoing iterative planning process with Manitoba Hydro. And so it's not just switching one for one, but it's transitioning the whole energy economy. As for whether things are premature or not, the timeline for reducing emissions that come from the burning of fossil fuels is actually quite pressing. And I think it was pointed out that based on the projections in the community energy investment roadmap, we're actually behind on the pace of change that we need to do to that net zero by 2050. So this motion is looking at what are those tools and mechanisms that we could use to phase out natural gas within the context of all this work that's happening to also meet those needs with supplying the correct amount of energy, building performance standards, things like that. It's not premature.
Yeah. Around the incentive piece, we heard from a few delegates incentivizing the changeover to lessen the carbon footprint. Does the city of Winnipeg offer any types of incentives, whether it be to home builders or to builders in general?
Currently, I know those incentives that the city of Winnipeg has. There is and has been incentives from the federal level and from efficiency management.
And you had mentioned that this is sorry, correct me if I'm wrong, the first area of research or work that the committee has undertaken?
This is the first one that's directing the public service to report back with research.
Okay. And were there any other suggestions of other areas of research or work informally that would be looked at?
No, but I would expect more to come forward in 2025.
I would expect the same, yeah. That's what I'm I'm trying to weigh on, asking these questions around incentives, around looking at building standards to try to advocate for a higher tier. All of these pieces of the puzzle that we could be looking at instead of getting people's hopes up that we're switching from natural gas to electricity. I mean, I recall a debate that took place with Councillor Lard strongly advocating for adopting tier 4 and it going nowhere fast. And then the province slapping us in the face and saying, not even close to tier 4, it's gonna be tier 1. So I'm just looking to be honest with folks here. Councillor Mays?
Yeah, perhaps a mix of a question and discussion. I mean, the whole thing comes down to what Ms. Asher said, right? How to translate commitment into action. So we make these grandiose commitments. We undoubtedly voted for the climate action plan. We undoubtedly, you weren't here yet to refer to you, voted for the CEIR. I don't know if anybody read it, but we voted for it. So there you are. That's what we said our commitments would be. That's what's out there. So how do you try and translate that into some action? We said two things in the strategic plan. 4.6 in the strategic plan was we were going to do stuff on geothermal and solar, and that is now, the action is a study that's being done about building retrofits. The other 4.7 was we were going to do a green utility, no action taken at all. So leaving that aside, Simon and Garfunkel line about, don't know why I waste my time writing songs I can't believe. Like, we got to either do something or get rid of this climate action committee and get rid of the, like it's just theater at some level if you don't do something. So how do you translate commitment into action? So, I mean, this isn't, if we had ginned up the, gone harder on the building retrofit stuff here, it's 50 million, it's 60 million, it's whatever million. But that motion recently to even refer it to the budget got defeated. So there's nothing coming in this budget, I would assume, maybe in the next budget on the 4th of the 4 years. So what's the action here at some point? Why do we have this committee? What are we doing? So it does get frustrating. So is it great public policy or not? I don't know for sure, but we certainly said we'd be doing something on this. So the original motion some years ago with Schreier was, I think I seconded it, was a bunch, other cities are doing this, Vancouver, New York, 2030. Oh, we're going to refer that all into the investment road community energy roadmap. So we do. So we get the roadmap saying this super detailed, perhaps over detailed charts and numbers. And then now, okay, let's do something with this roadmap. No, like we should do something, or like it's just getting, we have inherited to some extent these commitments from the previous council. So what are we going to do about it? This isn't perfect. This isn't my motion. It's from the committee that I chair, but it's a citizen committee that came up with this. Why have this committee if we just totally ignore it? I mean, frankly, one meeting took 4 minutes long. That was the meeting. That was the quarterly meeting. It took 4 minutes. So let's do something with this. I can certainly see ditching the zoning and permit. Either let's refer it to the planning committee, because zoning and permitting and land use, it's not us. I mean, that's pretty easy. It's not you guys either. It's not fair to you guys to come up with some report. So something saying let's do something on this, or let's not have that commitment. But why have this big public document and say we're going to do these things when we have no intent of translating commitment into action? So I mean, if there was some, we are, per my question to the mayor yesterday, trying to actually get started on the let's stop flaring methane and then turn it to renewable natural gas. That's good. Like if we actually had that today, you could say, well, okay, we're doing that. But we don't. So the years go by. So I don't know. There's only 3 of us. I mean, if we can refer this even to planning committee, but then that just forces everyone to come back in delegation again, and I don't know how much further ahead we are, so, I do think that we've got to at some point stop this pointlessness of, you know, we have this committee and the point is to have the committee, so. Like. Right, I mean, to which you might say, yeah, well, we said we'd have a living wage, Winnipeg, we voted that down, so true. So this isn't unique in terms of having a commitment that we're not putting into action, but why have the commitment?
Just on a couple of your points there, I'll turn to the clerk just to get clarification on the recommendation here from the committee. Does this fall within water waste environment jurisdiction?
While the organizational bylaw does include a provision that says that this committee reports to council on the management of environmental issues which can cross departmental lines and reporting relationships, we would suggest that the zoning and land use planning items be removed from this motion because they're really not within water and waste jurisdiction.
Okay, so a couple of faults there to begin with in this recommendation. Councilor Bob?
Yeah, could I just make one comment? As much as this was really interesting, it brought a lot of things to the forefront that perhaps in the future we should go off natural gas, but that may be century. I don't know how long it's going to take to get there. Right now, we're still in our planet using coal, which is by far worse. Natural gas, cutting back, I feel our best choice right now would be work with the other two levels of government to reduce use on it, as in have high efficiency furnaces in everybody's house. And that right away would be a huge gain. Cutting back, that would cut back on the gas. But switching over 100% to electrical, don't think there's enough copper in this province to provide the electricity for that. And if we have to take it from other grids, then we're right back to using coal, which would be the opposite. It would be just as bad as using our natural gas furnaces. So I think this whole focus is wrong.
Okay, we'll go to emotions here to wrap things up, but our director, yeah, for sure. Our director has a comments. Councilor Mays, did you want to go first?
No.
Yeah.
No, I just wanted to my understanding, I mean, I'm not on that committee, but my understanding of the motion here is really to report back on ways to phase out, stage out, make progress towards what options are there, what authority does the city have within all these other guidelines? Like, it's not unless I'm wrong, I didn't read this as a motion to say public service come back with a hard recommendation on how to turn all the gas off in the city. Like, it's a report on what kind of mechanisms are available even to start this phase out, to make some progress. I mean, am I misinterpreting that? Like, it's just kind of an informational report. Hey, we could do this, we could do that, in terms of just moving the needle on this versus, like, it's not, I didn't read this as a commitment to turn off the gas.
And I appreciate those comments. However, unfortunately, the way that it's communicated to the public, and we received several communication pieces from the public on this, that was not the way it was communicated. Unfortunately, it was that we were going to phase out natural gas, period. So maybe that's something that we could take away here as well. Before we get into that, Councillor Mays?
Let's go to a vote on this. It'll get voted down. That's okay. Could we, however, come up with something that says, let's have that vote. I think that's useful. Then could we, maybe I can move something. I mean, certainly the province in September said affordable energy plan. We want to move away from non-renewable heating sources such as natural gas. Some motion coming out of this committee that would go up to council saying, they are talking about a geothermal, it's not all electric, geothermal utility. So something saying we would like to report, we could want to report back in terms of their, what is the plan for the geothermal?
I believe even the building tier one was at the past government decision there, so that maybe
Yeah.
they could review something
Yeah.
along those lines. Before we go to any motions, could I have a suspension of the rules to accept the gentleman's written submission?
From Michael.
That's the email.
Yes.
Okay.
So moved.
Okay. Moved by Councilor Mays, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, and that's carried. Thank you very much, Michael, for your submission. If we're prepared to have a motion here,
I can put a motion forward that we receive this as information.
Councilor Dobson moves to receive the item number 4 as information. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Yes.
Could I,
Councilor
in order to
Baker,
move a motion
opposition?
saying that, so drafting by committee, which is always dangerous, we would like,
Any business.
under new business, that gives us a few moments. In essence,
Yes,
if the province is talking about a geothermal utility, maybe we want to support that, but basically trying to get some report back from the province on where things stand with the geothermal. But we can come to that under new.
okay, we'll do that in new business.
Yeah,
For clarity,
okay.
we'll let put that together and maybe ask you further details. We can move to item number 5 now. This is the public opinion research on Winnipeg climate change action. Brief introduction.
Yeah, same, this is from the Climate Action Resilience Committee and Ms. Raditz.
Okay, so the Climate Action and Resilience Committee is working on its work plan for 2025, connected to the Community Energy Investment Roadmap, which identifies that communications are an important way of advancing climate action within community. The Climate Action Resilience Committee is requesting information to support its mandate to advise council on climate change and to strengthen communications and involvement between the city and its residents. It's looking at public opinion polling as one tool to begin to understand how Winnipeggers view climate change, their level of awareness of City of Winnipeg efforts on climate change, and what climate actions and tools are supported. So through this motion, the committee is proposing to spend up to $12,000 of its budget to hire a consultant to conduct public opinion research on climate change perspectives, action. And it will work, if approved, it will work with a public service and a consultant to develop the polling questions. So the critical path is through this community EPC and then to council because it involves public engagement processes.
I don't see any issues. So if we were, for this climate action, if we were consulting with the other levels of government, that would be part of the conversation, would it not?
Not related to this motion, this is to connect with residents.
Well, with residents, would you not be telling them that we are talking to other levels of government, or is that separate? What are we saying here?
That's what the polling questions would be developed as part of the project.
Yeah. And I think Becky had mentioned that they work with the public service to create those questions.
Number 1, it says here, the level of awareness of City of Winnipeg climate change efforts. So that means that you would be telling or they're asking that question. Okay, forget I said that. They're asking that question. All right. No, we're good.
Are we aware of any similar poll that was recently done by the province of Manitoba?
Province of Manitoba did a survey of Manitoba's assessment of the province's efforts of climate change. And that was done in March of 2023 from Probe Research.
Were those findings made available to the committee?
Those are available to the committee, so this Probe Research will be looking specifically at Winnipeggers and the City of Winnipeg's efforts on climate change.
Okay, so specifically to the City of Winnipeg's efforts that we not have covered in the obviously. I would expect the provincial one would have had a sample size that equated for the population in Winnipeg, but I won't make any assumptions, so. Any other comments? Okay, do we have any movers on this?
Yeah, it's within the budget that's been allocated to the committee. They're spending their own money to do this. It's the committee chose to do this, so I'll move.
Okay. Move, Councilor Nays, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, that is carried. Moving on to item number 6.
Okay, this is another request for extension. The report, the rapid response process, development pre-application process, topic we're talking about here, was prompted by change last summer to discontinue the informal the pre-application process through property and planning. Part of the process to kind of discontinue that mentioned that this pre-application process as it pertained to water and waste actually that we wanted to keep that in some fashion. So the cancellation of that in the summer said, you know, it'd come back with a replacement specific to water and waste by the end of the year. The reason we're asking for an extension, I mean, we do have a proposed replacement for it kind of ready, but it's part of, if you may recall, our water and wastewater capacity study work that we've spoken about 2 years ago now. That study, I mean, this aspect of the study has been named the Review and Assessment of Municipal Servicing. Water, sewer, land drainage, but we abbreviate that as RAMS, Review and Assessment of Municipal Servicing. That report is a comprehensive kind of look at all of the process and like the maps out the steps in water and waste that we do in order to provide developers with information on capacity and servicing. It includes the industry scan, includes some best practices from other jurisdictions. It has a lot of recommendations to make improvements and make changes on our side. So we do need to come back with that report it will generate some requests from us to council for things like some additional resources and some different organizational structures there. So that report in its entirety is not ready to be presented just yet. It should be ready shortly, either January, February, that sort of thing, maybe March. So the request here was, instead of coming at council with 2 separate reports, if we get an extension on this, we can do a comprehensive presentation of the changes we want to make related to this work. So that's a long-winded way of saying we're looking for a few months extension here so that we can come back with a full report on this topic and other related topics.
Okay.
2 questions, both obscure. We are not, I take it, as part of this, reviewing the sewer bylaw provision that talks about you need a discharge control device if you have multifamily 3 units, but you don't need a discharge control device if you're putting 2 houses, each with 2 units on the same piece of land. So 4 units, you don't need it, 3 units, you do need it. Is that part of this review or not?
No.
Let's see. Okay. How can we come up with it? Looking the name of the study that we do on the riverbanks for stability has the acronym RAMS, and I think riverbanks may or may not still be under this committee's jurisdiction. Thank you. Can we come up with don't need to discuss it today. It seems incredibly unlucky or like we should have a different acronym, because we already have the RAMS study that Kendall Thiessen was still here, he could talk about, right? I just checked my notes. It's like is that somehow related, or is that just bad luck?
No, bad luck. The RAMS, that acronym we're using here was for the specific consultant assignment, the report that we put out. It's not related to a capital line item. This would be under, we had referred to it in previous budget documents as the water and wastewater servicing capacity review. So that's what the title would be when we come back with a more fulsome report. Especially if, this is.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's, the Riverbank Asset Management System, blah, 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 rants, so we will let, have him come up with a more whimsical name. I don't, it would seem helpful, we already have the two SPAP things we talk about, which gets confused, so if we can come up with a less confusing acronym, that would be swell.
I guess my one concern with this, would be that we're still providing, applicants with the opportunity to consult with, water and waste here, even though in our infinite wisdom as council, we eliminated that.
Right, the wording of the motion in July had said to discontinue the informal practice by end of December.
Yes.
Obviously, we would be continuing the status quo of, I mean, if we could call it something different if that met the intent of the motion, but until we have a new approved renamed process in place, we would be continuing what we're doing.
Absolutely. In fact, we strongly encourage
Yes.
potential proponents to reach out to us as soon as possible. The earlier, the better. We really, really advocate for that.
Okay, so for those that are listening, that are looking to develop, please reach out to Water and Waste ASAP. So that we don't get emails saying that you've gone to the 99-point line and now you don't have capacity. All right, movers.
So moved.
Extension of time.
Extension of time, I believe 120 days.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, that is also carried. Our final item.
And just for the committee's
Yes.
information on that last item, this is a recommendation.
Yes.
Yes.
Correct. Yes. Okay, we will see it at the next council meeting, I believe. I think it has to be, yes, December 12th. Okay, number 7, over expenditure.
Yes, this is an over expenditure report for the Newpick Headworks project. And I mention this every time, over expenditure, it's terrible phrasing. It's essentially a, extra work change order process. The reason it's before you today is because of the we were only delegated, up to $10 million authority worth of change orders on the project. And we've surpassed that, so this needs to come to SBC for a $1.27 million payment on a $272 million project. So what this is in what it's covering actually is a couple of small changes that were prompted by the city. So these are change orders that happen during contracts like this. We upsized the water main, changed a purchasing agreement for some of our equipment, the motor control centers, and we updated a fiber optic communication installation. They were upgraded on our request to address some developing needs as this project is spanning a long time, the overall project. It's important to note, I think it's important to note, like how because we come to this committee now for all these change orders. We have some of the change orders require authorization of an up to amount, like when we have an outstanding claim, for example, we come here for authorization up to an estimated amount, we go and settle the claim, sort it out, and then we adjust the actual payments. So our previous, I think it was over expenditure number 9, that was related to the Northwest Interceptor pipe failure, the flooded part of the plant. Our settled out, agreed to final change order costs there came in under what we had authorization for. So we actually saved $1.8 million under our previous authorization. So technically, this is 1.3. We are actually saving 1.8. This is kind of $500,000 ahead here in the big picture. That would be reflected on the summary table at the end of this report, where it summarizes all the change orders to date. You can see some of them are credits, some of them are expenditures. Yes, is that?
Yeah, maybe the only thing I'll add is that this is coming from our contingency, so just to be completely clear, we're not asking for any additional funds on this one.
Any further clarification on this? CAO authorizes up to 10 million. We're well in excess of that, but it's a $327 million project. So maybe we should consider a bit larger authorization in the future. Any movers here?
I'll move.
Moved by Councilor Mays, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, it's also carried.
Now, do we have new business?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to consider one item of new business.
So moved by Councilor Mays, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, that's also carried. New business?
I think we have something that would be acceptable and would venture north to council.
Sure. So I believe the motion from Councilor Mays is in light of section 4.6 of the Street Clarity Statute. Therefore be it resolved, the council formally requests the province of Manitoba to provide a report to the city when making progress towards geothermal utility.
Like AG.
Towards the geothermal utility.
I'm fine with that. I mean, we did 4.6 of the strategic plan talks about geothermal as something. Paraphrase.
All right.
So moved.
So moved by Councilor Mays, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That is carried. Thank you for working that up. That deals with all of our matters today. I appreciate everybody attending. I wish you all a wonderful weekend. Move to adjournment.
So moved.
Dobson moves adjournment. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Take care.